Ave Regina, Mater misericordiae, vita dulcedo, estes nostra salve.
The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to St. Matthew. The 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain to which Jesus had ordered them. When they saw him, they worshipped, but they doubted. Then Jesus approached and said to them, "All power in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And behold, I am with you always until the end of the age." The Gospel of the Lord. I think that some of the most powerful words in the gospel is what we hear today. Behold, I am with you always until the end of the age. Very consoling. Maybe something we should even have written in our rooms. We get up first thing to read that, to remind ourselves that Jesus is with us always until the end of the age. And he is with us in so many ways. But what I'd like to talk this morning is about how he is with us in the tabernacle. We are very blessed here on this property at St. Marie. There are 5 tabernacles. There's one in the rectory, our tabernacle here. There's one at Holy Family Academy. There's a tabernacle where the sisters live in the convent. And then there's one here where we have perpetual adoration. And we can maybe even somewhat claim across the street, Catholic Medical, there's a tabernacle there. So 6 just in this very small area. And that practice of adoring Jesus in the tabernacle began very early in the church. It first started because the church believed in the true presence and wanted to have hosts available for the sick and dying. And so they would elevate it so no animals could reach it. And then also there was a practice where they would take a piece of the Eucharist of Jesus and go to another church. There'd be like a procession, a walking. And that was and then when they came to that particular church, it would be added in during Mass in the chalice. And that was to indicate the unity amongst the churches. But eventually what began to happen, people did believe in the true presence, but they began to realize the more that we just sat before him, knelt before him, that amazing things happened in our hearts, our souls. And people felt a difference that they spent time in front of Jesus. And so for all these years, many hundreds and hundreds of years, Catholics have had that practice of worshiping Jesus in the true presence, but in a special way that the tabernacle, Jesus in the tabernacle, is extremely important to us. Right now we have 2 relics that are, one is Carlo Acutis and the other St. Manuel Gonzalez Garcia. And the sisters are bringing these relics throughout the diocese. And some people already had a chance to pray with these relics. And you may have already heard the story of Manuel Gonzalez Garcia, but he was a young priest ordained 1901, and he was sent to a small town, and he was raised with great fervor of the Eucharist. But when he got to this town, he was amazed that nobody was going to church, and when he walked into the church, it was dirty, dusty, there were cobwebs, and pretty much the tabernacle was abandoned. So he's known as the bishop of the abandoned tabernacle. And he was so discouraged by that at first that he decided that God was calling him, the Holy Spirit was calling him not just to be a priest, but a priest who would preach about the abandoned tabernacle, of not forgetting, not taking for granted that Jesus is truly present there. I'd like to read the following that he wrote. Jesus in our tabernacles is not simply present in a way that a statue would be present, but rather he is present as a real and living person. Therefore, we are called to respond to him, not just with our physical presence, as though we were a candle or decorative piece of furniture, but rather we should strive to be present before him with our rational faculties in our entire living being. That is to say, there should be both a corporal and a spiritual presence. Let us go deeper. If Jesus is present in the tabernacle with his eyes looking at me, then when I am before him, I should be looking at the sacred host with my physical eyes as well as with my eyes of my soul, looking into the interior of that host. If Jesus is in the tabernacle with his ears ever ready to listen to me, then I should go before the tabernacle listening to him with all my attention and with much interest to talk to him. If Jesus is present in the tabernacle with his hands full of gifts for the needy who come to ask for those gifts, I should go before him with my poverty fully exposed with great trust. In other words, if Jesus is present in the tabernacle to prolong, extend, and perpetuate his incarnation and redemption, the least I should do is to present to him my whole soul with all its powers, and my whole body with its senses, so that they may receive and be filled with the feelings, ideas, and affections of Jesus, our incarnate Redeemer. One of the things that can happen is we can so easily take for granted that he is here. We may have that belief. We may come in and genuflect and say, yeah, he's really there, and then sit down and our minds go all over the place. We say we have a hard time concentrating. But that reflection I just gave by Bishop Garcia, he's asking us, imagine that he's there, because he is, but imagine him with his eyes looking at you, with his ears listening to you, with his arms outstretched to help you with all the needs that you have, that you bring to him. Imagine it because it's true. And then have that dialogue with him. And even if a lot of times I don't hear what he's saying. We heard in the gospel today, the apostles, they worshiped, but they doubted. They worshiped, but they doubted. And we might say, well, how could they doubt? He died. He came through a wall and said, peace be with you. He presented him many, many times in his resurrected body. And then they went to the old ways of fishing. He appeared to them there. He has a dialogue with Peter. Do you love me? 3 times, do you love me? They had that experience, and yet St. Matthew says they worship, but they doubted. They were still having trouble fully giving themselves over to the Lord, to Jesus. And in a way, I'm glad that's there, because we do the same thing, right? We worship and we adore, but we're not so sure. We say we hope we would give our lives for Christ, that we would be martyred for Christ, but could we sit for 15 minutes quiet in front of the Blessed Sacrament? Would that be more agonizing pain than martyrdom? And yet we find that difficult. Or if I were to say, how about spend a whole hour in front of the Blessed Sacrament? Would that frighten us? But at the same time, would we proclaim, I could die for Jesus. I'd be one of those martyrs. Could we be with him? I know deep down inside, we truly believe him. We worship. We're like the apostles. We worship. We believe him. I would imagine, and I'm nervous even giving this example, that I could get struck by lightning, but I imagine that after the consecration and I gave out communion, I imagine that if one of the altar servers came out with a trash can and I put the rest of the hosts in there, that you would be mortified, that there would be gasping. What the heck is he doing? I'm nervous just even because I said it. Something would stir in our hearts because deep down we really believe. But do we spend time with him? We still have that doubt. We're still not sure. Maybe Jesus is for others. He answers others' prayers. He doesn't seem to answer mine. They seem to be really joy-filled in experiencing God. I struggle a lot with depression. Maybe it's not for me. We're just like that. We worship, but we doubt. And what helped the apostles is after this experience of the Ascension, they go pray for 9 days in the upper room. They pray for a great outpouring of the Holy Spirit for Pentecost and receive all the gifts that they need to help them with this doubt so that they worship and they believe more and more. Maybe that doubt is still there but becomes less and less. They worship and they want to spend time with Jesus. They want to be before him in the Blessed Sacrament in the tabernacle. Less and less do things of the world pull them away or pull them down away from Christ. So we leave here today, we walk out of this church, and spiritually we enter the 9 days in the upper room, waiting for the Holy Spirit to strengthen us again, the fire of his love. So maybe that could be part of our novena, that we may pray for a greater outpouring of the Holy Spirit in our lives to love Jesus even more deeply in the Blessed Sacrament. Not that we just come to receive and believe that when we consume him, he's transforming our lives, because he is, but the desire to want to spend more time with him. And if we can't get in the church, maybe even to be outside of the church if it's locked. If he can go through the walls in the gospel, if he can go through the walls of the upper room, he can go through the walls of the church. So let us as we continue, pray for one another for a great outpouring of the Holy Spirit and a greater love of Jesus in the tabernacle.
Regina Celi, letare, alleluia, qui aquam meruisti portare, alleluia, resurrexit sicut dixit, alleluia.